Hello, good afternoon. This is the LouRaePodcast. My name is Austin Course. I'm the host, and today my guest is Myles Jordan. He is an actor and a model here in Louisville, Kentucky. Myles, thank you for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. So, tell me a little bit about your early life growing up. Did you always aspire to be an actor? Did you grow up in Louisville?
I did grow up in Louisville, born and raised. I did go back and forth between here in Louisville and over in Clarksville, Indiana, at least 3 to 4 different times throughout my childhood. A lot of it was parents going for different jobs, especially my father. We moved from back and forth, so I went to a few different schools because of that. Yeah, it made for somewhat of a rocky, like going back and forth, between different homes, different cities, even though they were pretty much side by side to each other. Across the bridge and everything. Outside of that, my childhood, I wouldn't say it was the best, but I mean, I'm sure many other people would say the same thing. It wasn't too bad. As far as like my aspiration go, from childhood going into acting, I knew for the longest time that I wanted to do something in the world of entertainment, just in general. I grew up, watching a lot of movies, a lot of TV. I always just had like a fascination with what was happening on screen, but also behind the screen too, where all of it came from. I grew up a huge comic book nerd too, so for the longest time, especially when I was little, I always wanted to like write or just create my own comic book. I do recall going through a phase where I would just create random characters in my head and draw inspiration from whatever I see into the characters that I would create, what their superpowers would be, this and that. I remember at one point I tried to create like a catalog of different like heroes and villains that I would create, a makeshift book that I made. Yeah, that was creating, these characters, creating these heroes, villains. That took up a big part of my childhood. That's where I really expressed my imagination. For the longest time I knew that I wanted to do something in that realm, which is all media based. Like it all boils down to the same thing, whether it's like books or comic books, TV, movies, music. It's all part of the same thing essentially. I knew I wanted to do something in that world altogether. Acting in particular, though, that really didn't speak to me until, let me backtrack a little bit. So I met up with this local comic book illustrator. His name was Kevin Goodner. He unfortunately passed away back in 2019. Around the time I met him, I was like, full set on making my comic book goal become true. And one of the last things he told me was one of the last pieces of advice he gave me in regards to making it a reality was to dive into different forms of media and see where I can go with that and see what I could create out of that. And I was all open for doing that. I love TV, movies and all that. So I'm like, okay, let me try acting out. It's a good start, just to see where I can go with it. I looked up, local filmmaking groups here in Louisville through Facebook. I saw a whole bunch of different groups. One group in particular called LFG, Louisville Filmmaking Group is what it's called. I made a post simply saying like, hey, I want to get into the industry. I'm new. I'm willing to do anything from being an extra to being like a small part of the crew, whatever. Next thing I know, I got a response from somebody asking me to be an extra in their film. And lo and behold, I ended up going from an extra to being the main villain of that film instead. So obviously I couldn't pass it up. That was like a good opportunity for me. So I was like, okay. I made them clear like I had no acting experience prior. But yeah, I went in there, did my thing. People said I did a good job. And from there, I realized my love and fascination for acting and film. Yeah, everything just kept going from there. That all started back in like mid to late 2020. And here I am right now in 2024. So, and I'm still at it. So,
Yeah, tell me more about that first role process. What was it like? Did you have to kind of learn something new, or what was the process behind it?
I'll be honest, my process with it wasn't really as thorough as I make my character process now. Because again, it was my first ever role. Right. And again, I originally was going to be an extra in it, but then the director went ahead and just offered me the main antagonist role instead. I knew right then and there that a lot was going to be on my shoulders because of that. The main antagonist is just as important as the main protagonist. I knew that I would essentially be carrying a good half of the film in that regard. The thing that put me at ease though, in terms of my whole process, was that it was his first time directing, and he actually directed it with a good friend of his, so he was like more so of a co-director. Both of them were, a bit on the amateur side in that regard, and they weren't really taking it that seriously, especially considering that the film is more of a comedy. And so, they're very well aware of my introduction to the whole thing. It's my first thing ever. They had a mindset of treating it as like a fun project. That was something that I realized fairly quickly from that, is that they were just having fun with it. They were just making a film just to make a film. A couple local dudes from, here in Louisville wanted to get into the whole film process. A lot of that really put me at ease and made me feel like I really couldn't mess anything up for them. I mean, just like with any film, there is this thing about time being the biggest enemy. They just wanted to do it to have fun and see where they can go with it. Again, my process wasn't really as thorough as it is now. They told me who the character was, what his motivation is. They didn't really give me like a particular personality that he should have. The breakdown wasn't really, that detailed, so I just essentially played with what the script looked like, how the lines looked like they would, come about. I did the best I could, and I did my best to really sell it. At the end of it, I just really had fun with it. With how much fun that I ended up having with it, really made me realize that I could truly make something out of this. It being my first project too, I was a bit, on the skeptical side of how well I could really pull this off. With some of the people who I worked with who were already actors before, they thought I did a decent enough job. Sometimes I look back now in hindsight and think that maybe they were just being humble, but with how far that I've gotten to the point that I'm at now, I do feel like I do have a natural ability with it. Looking at the roles that I get, who these characters are, what their motivation is, what purpose they serve to the story, I feel like I'm really good at getting into the shoes of these characters somewhat effectively and efficiently. And again, I think my love for TV and movies really helped me develop that talent when I first started. I really love the storylines that I watched, and I try to get into these characters' heads and try to predict what they would do next if I was in that predicament. So I feel like I unintentionally developed this habit getting into the shoes of these characters I would watch, and so that kind of transpired into how I would get into the shoes of the characters that I'm reading off the script now. So yeah, my process in the beginning was be really sketchy. To be honest, I mean, I would say maybe it's still a bit sketchy now. I do feel like I've come a long way. Like I said, I've been acting for a little over 3 years now. I do feel like I've set a pretty good, solid foundation of how to get in tune with the characters that I'm trying to play as, understanding their tics, the little things that make them stand out, doing my best just to really sell who these people are, while at the same time bringing something within who I am as a person into these characters as well, to help them stand out even further.
So has the process changed in those 3 years? What do you think are the biggest leaps that you've made?
In general, I would say the biggest change is taking more time to fully dissect these roles that I'm given, really treat my characters as if they're real people. Like I said before, understanding the little things, what their tics are, what the tiniest things about themselves that make them, just make them relatable characters, and characters who you can really empathize and understand their journeys and where they fit into the story. As an actor, you owe it to yourself to bring what you have within you into the characters that you're playing. Anybody at the end of the day can be an actor, but how you go about getting into your characters is really critical, because I mean it stems from many things. You want to take time and commitment into really knowing who these people are, and a lot of times that requires talking to to the director or the screenwriter, understanding who the character is to them, but also understanding who the character is to you. One thing that I have learned somewhat fairly recently is that when you do work with your director or the writer, whatever, they may say one thing about who they want the character to be, but at the same time, a lot of them really want you as the actor to portray them in the way where it makes sense to you. That may not go for every director who you work with. Some of them may say, this is who you are, this is who you should be. But I guess you could say some of the more creative directors will want their actors to know who the character is, and then just bring who they feel like they should be in terms of the film. You want to make sure that you keep the tone of the film the same. If it is going for depending on the genre of the film, you want to make sure that how you act goes well with the tone of the whole film. Otherwise, it may feel like it's losing its identity a bit. So for me, I'm really keen on making sure that I let the director know versus their particular image on it too, because things are always constantly evolving and changing on any film project that you're on. A lot of it can be intentional, but a lot of it may not be intentional. Things change and happen all the time. There's a reason why you see improv with certain scenes in movies, or you watch a scene and you really question whether or not that was part of the script, because it may seem a little bit too natural for it to for it to come off the page. Certain things may call for you to really use your inner talents, working with your co-stars to make the scene flow naturally and as believable as possible. There's a lot of adapting that you really want to try to practice and hone within you. That's definitely one of the biggest things that I try to improve on every day, is just being able to adapt, take advantage of what I'm working with, making sure that it works well with the director and with the whole movie and with everybody else. It could be very easy to distance yourself from everybody on the film, especially if living it in your own world. But it's all a collaborative effort at the end of the day. Yeah, I'm really keen on adapting, working well with the people who I'm with. Most of all, having fun with it too. It's all make believe. I mean, especially as an actor, you're just you're playing make believe. That's something that we all do as kids. In a weird way, you kind of want to bring out your inner kid. Just have fun with the whole thing, because if you're not having fun with it, it's just not worth your while.
Right, yeah. It seems like the collaboration aspect that you talked about is really key in kind of creating a shared vision between you, the actors, the production staff, the director, the writers, all working together to make believe something that tells a great story or affects somebody emotionally. So what is it like working with other people in the Louisville scene, like you were saying with the LFG group? Are you still mostly local theater groups?
So ever since I did start acting and using the LFG and going around networking and stuff, I've met so many very passionate filmmakers in and out of Louisville too. All of them are very unique in their own way. They're all very diverse. They have their own styles, which is something I've also noticed. How they work with the camera, how they go about setting the scenes up, how they go about just general direction. They're all very unique and very different, which is good because it allows me to expand my horizon and see what else I could do in terms of my acting abilities, and experiment with different genres. Like I mentioned before, my first project was a comedy for the most part. I've done other films in different genres. I've done horror, I've done action, I've done thriller. They were all really different experiences, and they work on these different genres really helps you further adapt into your craft, and it gives you a chance to play different roles that you probably wouldn't have thought of playing before. You really owe it to yourself as an actor to adapt, and being able to work with different directors, them having their own styles, how they work behind the camera, how they direct, what type of movies that they're trying to make and show and inspire to other people. It's been really helpful in that regard. I've met so many people in the past 3 years who are very talented, very cool, been very nice to me. I mean, I have worked with a few people who I would consider to be a bit on the questionable side, because they're just different in that regard. I'm not really saying that as a negative, but they may have some things about them that I don't necessarily agree with, or really can't really get a grasp of. That's just what makes them different and unique. Again, I'm not saying that there is anything wrong with how they do things, but how they go about it is probably something that I wouldn't really do. But in those instances, that helps me get a good idea of if I do ever become a director one day, what I would do differently compared to them. And also, as me being an actor, maybe giving better direction of how they should feel in this scene, how they should talk in this scene, how they should go about doing the scene. The moments when I do come across instances where I'm not fully understanding it, or I just can't get it, that creates a learning opportunity for me. But those moments wouldn't happen if I didn't work with so many different and diverse people in and out of Louisville. Meeting different people allows different opportunities to happen. This one project that I was part of, that was actually PA for. I ended up meeting this woman on the set who owns a theater here in Louisville. She is actually looking to do some plays this year, because she's primarily a costume designer, but like I said, she owns a theater here in Louisville. One of the things I'm looking to focus on this year in particular is going to stage work. I've mostly been doing film, for the past three years when I first started acting. But going into theater is like my next step. Ever since I made that decision, I've met a couple of people who have done theater in the past. I've definitely looked up to them in terms of like, looking for advice and how to go about it. Meeting that one woman on that set who owns the theater here, I got in touch with her and told her about my interest in going to plays now. Me and her got to talking. She's actually looking to do like a combination of a play alongside with a movie. She calls it a cineplay in that regard. It's like a combination of like play and a movie happening simultaneously. Part of a play is on stage, but part of the movie is being seen on screens along with the stage. The movie plays, and then the next scene ends up being like the stage version, and then it goes into the film version, and then stage, and like again and again until the whole production ends. It kind of gives me a unique advantage of working on a film while at the same time working on a play, which I feel like is good. It gives me a chance to really experiment and find the differences between me acting in front of the camera and me acting on the stage, because obviously on the stage you want to project more compared to acting in front of the camera. That ties into the whole of being able to adapt on the fly. 1 minute you'll see the story play on the film, but then turn that into the whole play side. So being involved in that, I feel like was really lucky for me because I get to still do film, which is what I love, but also get a chance to practice theater and see where I can go from there. At first I really didn't think I could do theater. After doing like this small gig where I performed in front of people, I ended up having a really good time with it. Theater is like something that I'm stepping my feet into now. Hopefully with the show coming up soon that I mentioned, I'll have a good time with it and go further into theater. All that wouldn't happen if it just wasn't for like networking, getting in touch with new people, seeing what they're doing, establishing friendships with them, partnerships, and seeing what we can create. I'm really keen on meeting new people, not just for the business side, but also just to have fun with them, like on the films and stuff, hang out with them. That is definitely very critical as an actor. It's just like meeting new people, networking, just creating something with them, which is at the end of the day is the main goal for everybody.
I know you mentioned projection as one of the main differences between film and theater. Is there anything else you've had to learn in between balancing the two of those?
I mean, honestly, I feel like they both kind of go hand in hand. You are giving a performance in front of people. I mean, even when you're doing it on a film, there's the other cast, the crew, everybody watching and everything. So at the end of the day, you just have to sell it, whether you're on a film or on the theater. Outside of projection, the other thing I have noticed on theater, you really, and I know I've been talking about being able to adapt a lot, but on theater you definitely hone in on your adapting skill. On theater you really can't afford to mess up necessarily. A lot of it's on the spot. You have to, I would say you definitely have to work with your co-stars more, a much more intimate sense compared to on a film. Say it's like you and one other person on the stage, really have to form that collaboration and teamwork to carry the scene and to keep carrying the scene until it moves on to the next scene. Memorize as much of the script as possible, between the two of you, make the whole performance as authentic and as just believable as possible. And a lot of that really boils down to how much rehearsal time that you have, how much line memorization that you have. That's definitely another difference, I would say, rehearsal. You definitely have to go out of your way to put in more time to do rehearsals for plays, I would say, more compared to film. I mean, every time I have to rehearse for a film, a lot of it's on the same day. I would memorize my lines, of course, but in terms of performing the scene and making it play out, working with the co-stars, a lot of times, rehearsal is called for before the camera actually starts rolling. We understand, how much blocking we have to do, which is setting the scene up, setting up the movements of the characters, making sure that's all in frame. And actually going into that, the whole technicality of it too is different. I just mentioned blocking before, which is the movement of the characters and how the scene's going to be set up, between where the actors are and where the camera is. But again, that kind of goes hand in hand with theater as well, although I feel like there is a much more of a technical aspect in terms of film compared to theater. A lot of times on film, the sets can be anywhere. Locations are constantly changing. In the theater, everything is on stage. When the backdrops move or props move, a lot of it's done behind the curtain or whatever, or in real time as the play is going on. On film, there's a lot more going on than people realize from what they're seeing on the screen. What people will see like on the movie or like on TV show, whatever, they're seeing the world that the story takes place in. You know, unless you really know about like how the business works, you wouldn't even know that there is a bunch going on behind the camera versus what you're seeing through the camera's lens. There is a big technicality, like a big technical difference between film and theater in that regard. There is a much more stressful element in terms of theater compared to film. On film, you have more room to, to make mistakes on film compared to theater. Not to say that you can't, not to say that you can't make a mistake on theater, but if you do, you really have to do your best to take advantage of that mistake, whether you flub a line or if you forget your line, whether maybe continuity changed on the stage where one prop item is in a different place now. We have to find a way to use it to where it makes sense with what's going on in the story or whatever. You have to think on the fly almost, and you have to just be ready for anything on the theater compared to a movie. On a movie you have more room for error. With that said though, you definitely want to do your best to avoid error, from a time constraint, a standpoint. At the end of the day, you're giving a performance and you want to make it believable. On a theater, you definitely want to project more and be more animated, bring more physicality into your roles compared to being on a film, unless your film project requires you to be more physical. Treat it more grandiose. You don't need to go all out like that on a film, unless the situation requires it. They say it all the time. You want to make sure that that you're heard and seeable from the farthest person in the back of the audience, so that they can see what you're doing and have a good time with the show as well. Performance wise, I would say those the biggest differences. At the end of the day, you're selling it, but on a technical aspect, there are definitely some differences that you have to take into consideration. I have worked with some people who do strictly theater and they do film, and they feel like they're in a different environment and space because they're not used to the boom mic or the camera or the other equipment going on around them. They're not really used to that, so it made them a bit uncomfortable in that regard. Me having more experience in film, I have the opportunity of teaching them this is typically how it is. It's really not that much different. You can afford to take a step back, being all performative, really projecting and all that. You can soothe your voice a bit. You can bring it down a bit. The microphone will pick up everything and all that. So working with people who have done theater and going into film is very interesting to me, because I can sense them feeling very different in that environment compared to the other way around. Being in one or the other and doing both of them you can definitely feel a huge contrast. For me, I wouldn't say there's too much difference outside of being more grandiose on the theater, but there's differences depending on which area that you're looking at. Like I said, the technical side, there's a lot of difference. Performance side, there are differences, but really not by much, at least to me.
It seems like there's a lot to learn from either one, and while they do play off each other, there are subtleties in both that can kind of lead you to different kinds of performances in terms of either quality or what you want to get out of each role. In terms of personal learning experiences and things like that, have you had to deal with any kinds of rejection? It seems like you have to kind of cultivate a great deal of confidence, not only in projecting these characters on stage, but also as an actor looking for work. Always putting yourself out there takes a lot of gumption and a lot of confidence. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So on a personal level, I'm definitely far from the most confident guy out there. Just to go back a little bit to my childhood, I grew up very shy, very introverted. For me, I cared a lot about how people thought about me, how people looked at me, this and that, which I'm sure goes the same for everybody at that age, through childhood and all of that. So even to this day, I'm still introverted, but going into film has definitely changed all that for me. I've met more people and made more friends since I started my acting journey. I've learned a lot about myself in that regard. I've learned a lot about who I really vibe with versus who I probably can't really vibe with that well. But going to the whole rejection aspect, I'm assuming that you're talking about when I do auditions, if I get rejected or whatever.
Yeah, or even personal rejection where you might not feel you're up to the task or something like that.
Yeah, I've definitely had those moments, as I'm sure many other people have, those moments in in different parts of their life. The sad truth about it is that rejection, as much as it hurts, what really helps you grow as a person. Being rejected makes you think about, okay, well, what did I do wrong, or what should I have done differently? And that just creates a learning experience for you. For me, and I know a lot of actors, typically become very afraid of rejection for a variety of different reasons, maybe because they really wanted the job or they just don't want to have that feeling. Just the feeling of being rejected can make you feel like, very unworthy, or make you feel like that you're not good enough. For me, though, and this took some time for me to really learn, I mean, being rejected from an acting standpoint, I feel like isn't really as painful or as hard as many other actors make it out to be. When I do an audition or whatever, or when I get rejected, at the end of the day, it's good for me to, for one, at least do it, because there are some people who don't want to do it out of the fear of being rejected, and they just miss on that opportunity. So for me, I just love that I did do it, whether I get rejected or not. When I do the audition and I meet up with the casting director or like the director, it just creates like another networking opportunity, really. You meet these people who are like trying to cast people for the new movie. You send them your resume, they know about what you do, familiar with your work and all that. So when you do your audition and you feel like it didn't go that good, I mean, a lot of times, you've heard stories of people feeling like that they flew up their audition, but they ended up getting the role anyway. You've heard stories of people getting rejected of whatever they auditioned for. But the thing is that even though you may have been rejected the role, they might have seen something within you in your audition that made you stand out and made them think that they want to use you for something in the future, or maybe in the same project that you're auditioning for. I know for a fact that I've experienced at least 2 different times where I auditioned for something, I didn't get the role, but they still wanted to use me based off of my talent. In a way, I still won. I was still able to be part of the project. I may not have gotten the role that I auditioned for. If it was a role that I really wanted to get, it may hurt still, but just being lucky enough to still be part of the project, that's something that I'm thankful for. I mean, with how competitive, the whole acting market is, you have to be very fortunate to even be part of a project that you want to be involved in. You want to be thankful that they at least gave you something, other than giving you nothing. I mean, with that said, you don't want to have to be part of any project just because. You want to know your worth and know your capabilities and know if you're really truly worthy of this project or not, because not every project can be a great project, unfortunately. So you really have to be careful with what you're being involved in, people who you're working with, because you may not work with them very well. But with that said, any project that you're lucky enough to be part of, you should feel thankful in that regard. Anybody who is scared of auditioning for roles and stuff, just look at it as a networking opportunity, because even if you feel like you did a bad job, you never know. Somebody will look at your performance and think you did a good job, and maybe they want to use you. There's a reason why so many actors use self-tapes, like a monologue or like a scene of something. They do it in their own way, and this one casting director may see it and really like it. They want your information and probably want to work with you. So even if you feel like you did a bad job, and if you do get rejected for the role that you auditioned for, you never know what could happen. And that's definitely one of the biggest things I've noticed being involved in this industry, is that anything can truly happen. Even if you feel like you did a bad job with it, if you feel like that you didn't put as much time and commitment and effort into whatever you're doing, for some people what you do may be more than enough. It can be very easy to be discouraged in this industry, but with how many things could happen out of the blue, you never know where things can take you. Like I said, my first project, I was going to be an extra and ended up being the main antagonist instead. That's something that I'm sure a lot of people wish they had that blessing for. That experience propelled everything else that came afterwards. As scary as, it could be in that regard in this industry, you can't let that get the better of you. Rejection is a part of life, in and outside of film. It's what helps you build your confidence. A lot of times rejections can be blessings in disguise too. It's nothing to really be discouraged about. It's just a way for you to get further into where you deserve to be in your life.
That reminds me a lot of what you were saying about adaptability. Constantly, changing and shaping yourself around the opportunities, and that way you can always reach out and find new ones that might be in the wings waiting for you. That also kind of goes back to what you're doing other than acting as well. Can you tell me more about your modeling?
I don't have too much to say, to be honest with you. I've started modeling a little over a year now. I don't have too much experience. I have been thankful enough to participate in a few photo shoots with some cool people who I've simply, networked with throughout my years. In fact, certain places I've been to because of my acting is how I got into modeling in the first place. That and a couple other reasons too, just to backtrack a bit. So how I got into modeling was somewhat a bit random. I remember a few times way before I even started acting, I would just get these random compliments from random people about how I stand, how I pose. That would be without me even trying. I remember one woman in particular, she straight up said that I looked like a model. And this was years ago. I was probably 19 or 20 when this happened. And this was way before I got into acting or into entertainment in general. I remember getting those type of compliments always stuck with me. It really got me thinking for a good while. I know that when I officially got started into acting, I at some point in my journey thought, well, maybe I can actually take advantage and go into modeling now. I'm meeting so many people. A lot of these filmmakers end up, being photographers as well. And I knew at some point I wanted to get professional headshots taken. So I was like, okay, well, when I definitely get my headshots taken, maybe I can go further into modeling in that regards. So yeah, like I said, I started modeling, less than a year ago. I met up with some people, some fellow photographers, and some people who did my headshots. One photographer in particular, a local creative here, his name is Aldair. He actually owns his own clothing line as well, which was perfect because it went hand in hand with him being a photographer and me modeling and stuff. So I modeled some clothes for him. Me and him met up at a party for a music video. One of my friends invited me to, for extras and stuff for the video. And I met him there. Yeah, me and him just got to talking and we started to, collaborate. He wanted to take some pictures of me, for his clothing line. And so I did that. We did 2 to 3 other photo shoots after that just to play around. I told him I wanted to, grow my modeling portfolio at that time. We had 2 different photo shoots set up. So, we could just take pictures of me and I brought my own clothes and put my own outfits together. And ever since then, I was like, yeah, I can definitely do this. With those compliments and with people thinking that I have that look, I was like, okay. I was like, yeah, I think I can definitely do this. I've done, like I said, I've done a few photo shoots since then. Haven't done a lot as of recently. It is something that I do want to take advantage of further along. With one particular event that I'm going to be planning soon, hopefully that can lead me into doing even more modeling sessions and stuff coming up in the future. And also, just for the sake of branching outside of acting, doing different things to, keep me within the same field of entertainment, acting and modeling and all that type of stuff. It always goes hand in hand. So, especially if you're doing marketing material for your film, the posters or whatever. So yeah, modeling, I wouldn't say I have a lot of experience with it. I would consider myself to still be a novice at it. It is something that I definitely want to take more seriously as time goes on, alongside with acting as well. And honestly, it's just one of those things that I feel like anybody can do, especially with nowadays, with how open diversity is in terms of modeling, whether you're tall, slim, thin, or big, heavy set or whatever. There's beauty within all of us. What's beautiful about you really makes you stand out. The little things that you do, the type of clothes that you like to wear, owning up to your own style, because we all have our own styles. What we look at is beautiful and what we think is hip and trendy. All of our eyes see so many different things. Being able to have really opinionated viewpoints on things is what makes everything so beautiful. Having these differences, these different viewpoints on what makes us beautiful, things that make us stand out, whether it's how we wear our hats, the amount of jewelry that we wear, earrings or whatever that we wear. Those are the type of things that really help you stand out. That's definitely been one of my biggest things as a model that I feel like I need to own up to. Doing what really fits me as a person, what really brings out my personality as a model, wearing what makes me feel confident and what makes me feel comfortable, doing what I can to bring out what's within me to help me stand out as a model. Everybody's beautiful in their own different way. Some people may look the same depending on what they're wearing, what their facial construction is. That can make it a little bit hard for people to stand out if they look the same as somebody else. So, me being new to the whole modeling game, that was something that I feel like I was very fortunate to know. The best way for me to stand out is to be comfortable with who I am, bringing out my vulnerability as a model, being open to anything, realizing that what makes me unique is what makes me beautiful. It's not all about how you look. It's not all about how you walk down the runway or whatever. It's just you showing your own style. Your style may not work with everybody in the room, but that doesn't really matter. Your own style and how you do things your own way is what makes you unique and beautiful. I know that may sound pretty cliched, but I mean, a lot of people can be very insecure about how they look. They look too thin or they look too big or whatever, but what makes you different is what we really need in the world, especially in the modeling world or just in the world in general. You should be comfortable and, you should, definitely own up to what makes you different and just take advantage of it, and, have fun with it. Me being a model pretty early, that's something that I learned, that I was really lucky to learn about. It's a lesson that I go by every day now. I apply that to my acting talents as well. I have my own acting style, just like many other people do as well. A lot of creatives prefer you having something different to help make you stand out, embrace more creativity in the world. The last thing that people want in the whole creative world is for things to be the same, because if things are the same, then there's really no creativity. That's just one of many lessons that I've learned from being a model.
Working on your personality, your characterization, and what makes you strong as an individual are all things that people appreciate in any kind of artistic medium and any kind of interconnectivity that we might have between each other. We all can appreciate those parts of us that are very special and very unique to us, and to cultivate those, it brings an image of yourself that people can really understand and cling to, and you yourself get to put that out to others. With that in mind, are you working on anything right now?
I mean, it is funny, like every time I try to tell people like what I'm working on now, I have to stop and think because I have so many things going on, to be honest.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that to brag by any means, but I mean, I just have a lot going on. Yeah, let me actually start off a bit about what I have going on acting-wise. I'm currently in the middle of, and I'm kind of ballparking it here, at least 2 to 3 different film projects right now. Yeah, I'm working on this science fiction slash steampunk slash war film at the moment right now. A lot of this is local here in Louisville too, by the way. We've already shot a good amount of stuff for this. We're looking to get the whole thing wrapped sometime before this year ends. Yeah, my character is the role of a scientist slash doctor in the movie. He's a bit of like a timid, shy, awkward kind of guy, somewhat similar to like Jerry Lewis's Nutty Professor way back in the day. So Jay Wellen, my director, the director of the movie, like that was essentially how he said like characters should pretty much be. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that and seeing what I can do with that further. Got that going on, and I also have detective slash thriller that I'm involved with too. It's actually the sequel to a film that I did last year, All Blood and Tears. Part 2 is what we're working on now, directed by James Watts, who's another local director here in Louisville. Last time I shot with him was a while ago, but he's still doing shots for the movie right now with like the other actors and stuff too. So I'm sure he'll call me up at some point relatively soon to like do other scenes with him if need be. Yeah, that's another project he's looking to wrap up sometime this year. There is this other project that I might potentially be working on soon. I don't want to say for sure that I'm fully involved in it. I did meet up with this other local director here in town who's looking to do this one film where the message is about autism awareness, kidney transplant awareness too. She's looking to turn it into like a feature at some point. But yeah, that's one project I'm potentially going to be a part of soon. I don't want to say for sure that I will. I have like, at least 2 different meetings with her this week leading up to where I might be in the whole thing or whether or not I might be, involved. Have that going on as well. Outside of that, I'm still auditioning when I can, looking for roles when I can, seeing where things go without having too much on my plate. I made the mistake a couple of times of having 2 different projects be around like the same time frame at once, which made it a bit difficult for me to go back and forth on it. So I'm trying to keep it all balanced in that regard. Oh, and I also did mention the play that I have coming up soon called Season with Love, which is going to take place at the Absolute Studio Theater here in Louisville off of Melwood Avenue at the Melwood Arts Center. The show for that should be starting sometime in April. Anyone could look up information on the Melwood Avenue website or the Melwood Arts Center website. Tickets I think should be on sale at some point soon for that, but all of it will be on the website. But yeah, outside of the film, theater, and acting and everything, as I mentioned before, I do have an event It's actually going to be taking place here in LouRae Riverside Arts and Events. It's called High Fashion on Main, which is a fashion show that me and my fellow model friend Kenneth K.P. Parker, we're going to be presenting here on April 6th. Right now, we're still in the beginning stages of everything. We still got a little bit of time before the event actually happens, a little over a month now, for preparation of that. But yeah, me and him, we've already talked about how we're looking to set up the whole event, how the staging is going to work, how we're going to get the staff and team together and everything. A lot of it's still a work in progress, but right now I'm feeling pretty confident that we got the structure nailed down, getting all the models together, all the clothes together, making sure that we have a good time with the show, and make sure that everybody else has a good time with it. Like I said, a lot of it's still a work in progress, but I'm sure as the days gets closer to it, a lot of things will come into fruition with the amount of things that we already have pre-planned and everything. So yeah, right now we're just working on spreading the word, letting more people know about the event and everything. We're just hoping that we can have a good turnout, and more than anything, making sure that people have a good time with it.
Well, thank you, Myles. You've given a lot of great insight and advice to not only actors that are currently working in Louisville, but also people who want to get into that world and want to learn more about that. So thank you so much. You've told us what's going on. Where can people find you?
I have various social media accounts out there. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on IMDb as well under Myles Jordan. You can follow me on Instagram. You're probably going to laugh at this. It's Mile High Club. It's MYLEHYGH and then club. It's like Mile High Club, but replace the I's with Y's. So, yeah. Same goes for my Twitter or X now.
Well, Myles, thank you so much for joining us. We'd love to have you, and we're excited for your shows. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Austin.